Adjunct Professor Moran, Microeconomics 112. In this handout, we're going to practice calculating, again, marginal physical product and marginal revenue product. Marginal revenue product being the demand curve for the firm. Then we compare that and use our marginal revenue product, our demand curve for the firm, with the marginal resource cost, which is the supply curve for the individual firm, to determine how many workers will be hired. In this handout, besides reviewing that, we're going to add a concept of total revenue and total cost to determine profit or loss per day. Then we're going to practice seeing if a firm will hire additional workers in a monopoly position. Okay, so again, marginal physical product is how much extra output falls off the assembly line with the additional one additional worker. Marginal product in competition is how much extra marginal revenue in our last unit on competition is how much extra revenue a firm earns when they sell one more unit. But here we're studying inputs, so we've modified those terms a little bit to focus not on the sale of another unit, but the hiring of another input. That's the difference between marginal physical product and marginal revenue product, and say marginal revenue in the cost curves and revenue curves for types of competition. Keep in mind when you calculate these, you have to divide by the change in labor, but since the change in labor is 1, it's as simple as subtracting out. So with the additional of 1 worker, you get 22 extra units. 2 workers, you get an additional 18. 3 workers, you get an additional 16. The 4th worker, your total output goes up by 14. 5th worker, total output goes up by 12. 6th worker goes up by 10. 7th worker goes up by 8. And 6. Okay, marginal physical product, but marginal revenue product, you take how much extra output falls off the assembly line, extra, not total, extra, and multiply that by the cost per worker, marginal revenue product. So here, the wage rate is going to be $50 a day, and they're going to assume the product sells for $3. 3 times 22 is 66. The second worker adds an additional 18 units of output, times $3 is $54. An extra 16 units of output for the third worker, times $3 is 48. 4th worker contributes an extra 14, resulting in marginal revenue product of 42. 5th worker contributes an extra 12, times 3 is 36. 6th worker contributes an extra 10, times 3 price that things sold for. 7th worker contributes an extra 8, times $3 the price of the product. Okay. So we've just completed the demand curve for the firm. If the equilibrium market wage rate is $36 a day, did I skip a question here? The firm will hire 5 units. So the wage rate is being taken from the market. We're going to assume this is a perfectly competitive industry. Quantity of input, wage, equilibrium. This is the individual firm paying $36 a day. Okay, so if you could generate $66 of income by hiring 1 worker, would you? And you're only paying $36, would you do it? If you could earn $54 by hiring the second worker and pay him $36, would you do it? If the third worker contributed an extra 48 and you're only paying him $36, would you do it? So all these, although the marginal revenue product is going down, you're still adding to your total profit because your marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost. The marginal revenue of the next worker is greater than the marginal cost of the next worker, 42.36. Here it is. So you're going to hire 5 workers and produce a total of 82 units. Given the firm will receive a total revenue of, okay, so they're selling this thing for $3 a unit. This is the price of output times how many units they produced, 82, quantity of output. That gives you a total revenue of $246. its cost, don't forget it has a fixed cost of $50 a day. That's given to us in the problem. Its variable cost will be its labor. It has 5 units of input, and the wage rate is $36. Okay, that gives you variable cost of $180 plus fixed cost of $50, gives you a total cost of $230. Total revenue minus total cost gives this firm a profit of 16. Okay. Completely different problem now. We're not using this data anymore. Suppose you work for a firm and it sells a monopoly market. Now, we haven't covered monopoly yet, but remember that a monopoly faces a downward sloping demand curve, and to sell more units it has to lower the price of its output. Demand for a product, demand for labor is derived from the demand for the product. So, answer the following questions. If you hire an additional worker and output goes up by 50, okay, so here we have quantity of input. We don't know what the starting amount is, but we know that it's going to change by 50. Quantity of input. And you want to sell an additional 50 units, and you're at 125. This is quantity of output. You're at output goes up by 50 to 125. That means that we had to start at 75. The change here is 50. Okay. You know that you have to lower the price of the output from $3 to $2. That's a negative relationship between price and quantity. What is the wage rate you're willing to pay for the worker? Here we have to go about determining the marginal revenue product in a different fashion. So what we're going to do here is we're going to calculate total revenue and then calculate marginal revenue product from that. So 3 times price of 3 times quantity of 75 gives us a total revenue of $225. And $2 per unit, lowered in order to sell a higher quantity because demand is a negative relationship between price and quantity. This is a monopolist, so he sees the market demand curve. That would result in a total revenue of $250. So the marginal revenue product of adding 1 worker is $25. And that's what the wage rate would be. You would set the marginal revenue product, how much extra the worker contributes, to the marginal resource cost. So since those have to be equal, if the marginal revenue product is 25, the firm would be willing to pay $25. One more practice problem like that. And what we've got here is, assume you hired additional worker and output now stands at 125 units. Okay. Output stands at 125 units. Okay, quantity of output. Okay, so we have quantity of output, and output now stands at 125. If you hire another worker, output rises to 165. Given the demand curve for your product, you know you have to sell at a lower price, so you drop the price of the output from 2 to 1. What is the maximum wage you would be willing to pay? Would you hire this worker? Okay, let's do the same analysis. Here's our total revenue of $250. Here's our total revenue of $165. Our marginal revenue product would actually be negative $85. Since our marginal revenue product is negative, we would not hire this worker, or we would not be willing to pay him. Okay, so that was just a little review of our rule to determine how many workers to hire. Marginal revenue product equals marginal resource cost, resource revenue. And once we have that, we can go down, we can determine how many workers we're going to hire given the wage rate. In our next sessions, we'll begin to discuss non-purely competitive markets to determine wage rates.